Hi everyone, Savannah here, and welcome to another Patreon exclusive video. Today we're sketching this cute little raccoon that is foraging for berries. As always, I'm using my free brush set, all of which is linked down below, so let's jump in. Then first thing we're going to do is change that background color, so click into layers, select background color, and scroll up until you find the raccoon color palette. We're going to use this orangey tan color for the background. Then you're going to create a new layer, bring it below the outline layer, grab that circle brush, and we're going to trace and fill in the shape of the raccoon. We don't have a lot of browns or blacks that we're using. We're going to use a lot more purples, but let's start with this lighter orange color, trace the raccoon, and then we will start adding details in a second. And now with that general shape filled in, let's add some details here. We'll be working on this for quite a bit because there are a lot of details. So make sure you alpha lock that layer. Grab this dark purpley pink. It says dark pink, but it's a dark purple color. Grab that circle brush and we're just going to start adding in some color to the tail here. And you don't have to be clean with this. We are going to blend everything out as we go along and towards the end of the raccoon here. So just add that color in and we will work on it bit by bit. Now we will come back to the tail, so let's go ahead and add some of this color to the face and we'll start working out the details a little bit. Again, we're going to be working on this for a little while, so we'll add in the face details, some blending there, and then we'll move on to the body and then finish out the tail. And again, you don't have to be perfect when you're laying these colors down. we're just kind of seeing where the colors are going to go. So grab the circle blend brush, add in some of these colors. We will work on blending this out. I'll show you the technique that I use to make it look a little bit more like hair on the side of the raccoon. But for now, we're just kind of placing the colors so we can see visually where we want these colors to be, if we want to pull in different colors to it before we start putting in those final details. And I am kind of blending a little bit here. We'll add even more details to this. The circle blend brush does kind of give it a hair-like texture or presence, but we're going to make it even better at the end. So let's just keep adding the colors here. You can pick whichever colors you want. If you want to be more traditional and do more of like a brownish color for them. For the raccoon, you can definitely do that. Make them more red, whatever colors you want to use. I'm just using these ones from the color palette, but again, this is your raccoon that you want to draw, so you can use any colors that you want. We're going to just keep building up on these areas. So we will work on the face, we'll work on the tail, work on the body, and keep building up these areas. And if you've been following me for a while or have used these brushes before, you know that the circle blend brush is pressure sensitive. And so you can just lightly add in these colors like I'm doing. I'm not pressing too hard on the Apple Pencil because I want to kind of lightly bring in this color and blend it with those darker tones. So this is a very light color I'm adding into the space with the very dark color I'm adding into the space. And so I want them to blend a little bit better. So using a lighter press, you can blend it. It's very blendable as a brush. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. Now we're going to grab this dark purple here. I'm going to bring the brush size down, and this is how I'm doing the hair like texture on the raccoon. So I'm grabbing that purple because it's going to be blended up into this lighter white color. We'll just do this with the colors kind of overlaying on top of each other. This is going to make it look like hair. Again, using that circle blend brush, I brought that size down for the same brush we've been using to add these colors, and I'm just very lightly adding these sketch marks of the hair onto the surface of the raccoon here to give it that texture that I'm looking for. And we will be doing the same texture on the body as well. So we're just grabbing these colors, grabbing the lighter color that's below the area that we're kind of blending it up into. So in this case, I'm using that white, blending it up. And then I'm also grabbing in the purples as well. And a lot of the coloring I am just grabbing from the surface of the raccoon here. So just hold your finger down on the color you're trying to get. It'll grab that in the color picker there, and then you can use that to blend out, add these hairs, whatever it is that you want to use that for. And we're just going to keep building up on the raccoon head here before we move on to the other areas. So we'll add in the eyes, we'll add in the rest of the kind of details here. Then we'll jump into the tail and then the body as well. But again, we're just working on the head right now, getting it finalized to what we want it to look like before we move on to those next sections. And I am adding a little bit of a lighter color to the edge here. I'm going to have it so that there's a little bit of a glow on the top of the raccoon. So I'm using this white color here. I'll blend this out. I'll use the same technique of kind of dragging those colors in to make it look like this hair texture, but I want to give it a little bit more of a glow on top of their head. And now let's go ahead and add a new layer. We'll work on the nose and the eyes. So add that new layer. Grab this really dark, almost black color. And then we're going to trace and fill in the shape of the nose as well as the eyes. But make sure you grab that circle brush and not use that circle blend brush. Now we're going to add some detail underneath their eye here. So grab that kind of grayish blue, light blue color, and we're going to fill in the shape underneath the eye here. And now that we have that filled in, let's go ahead and alpha lock this layer and we'll work on adding details. Grab that dark purplish color, that circle blend brush, and we're going to add a little bit of lightness to the nose here again to give it a little bit more definition, more character to it than just having it one stark color. And then we'll add a little bit of a lighter color to give it the shininess like it is in, getting reflected from the light. And now we're going to bring down the color of that area underneath the eye. It doesn't need to be as bright, so we're grabbing a darker purple here and just going over it a little bit. We're going to darken it to blend in a little bit more with the other kind of shaded darker areas. And then we'll work on the eye a little bit. now that we have that kind of filled in, let's go ahead and add a little bit of reflectiveness to the eye. So I'm going to do this blue color. I'm using the circle blend brush still, and I'm just adding very lightly the kind of light shining off of the eye here. I'll go over it a little bit with a heavier touch, but I started with a light kind of touch here with the Apple Pencil just to kind of place it, and then went over it with a heavier touch. And now we're going to work on the tail. We're going to blend this out, and then we'll use some of that same technique to add in the hair to that tail as well. So I'm just kind of grabbing some colors and blending it out a little bit before I add in those smaller details, just to have a starting base point. Now, before I actually add in those details to the tail, I'm going to start placing color on the body of the raccoon here so that I can see where the colors are going, if I want to change the color of the tail at all, or add different colors to the tail if I want to change the color of the body. So I'm going to start placing the color here on the body. Then we'll start working on the details for the body. We'll work on the details for the tail as well, but I want to kind of visually see where we're at with the coloring across the whole body of the raccoon. And I'm just placing color. I'm not being perfect with this. We will blend everything out and make it look nicer as we go along. But right now, again, I'm just kind of placing the color where I want to, or I think that it's going to need to go. And then we will blend it out at those fine hair details. But I'm using that circle blend brush, just adding the colors in these specific areas. And then, like I said, we'll blend everything out and make it look better. And I do want to bring the head of the raccoon out a little bit more. I think I cut it off on the right side there. So I'm going to touch that up real quick and then we'll continue working on the body. And now let's go ahead and blend these colors in. Again, we'll add fine details of those hairs in a second, but right now let's just blend the colors in to get that base coloring in, and we'll add those finer details in a second. And I'm just following the curve of the raccoon body here, so it makes it look a little bit more natural, like the hairs, how they would fall on the side of the, of the body. And so that's what I'm kind of doing, is just following that curvature there. And then I did want to lighten up some of the area. It's looking very purple. There's not a lot of very color variation here at the bottom, so I'm going to add some lighter colors in as well. This is the perfect time to kind of fine tune where your raccoon is at before we start adding in those finer details. And I'm also going to touch up the face a little bit more on the raccoon here, bring in some lighter color here on the side. Again, just kind of touching up a lot of the different areas. We'll blend this out, add in the kind of finer details of the hairs, but I just want to lighten it up a little bit more. Now I'm going to add in some of those finer hairs here. So I'm going to add in, I might make them a little bit thicker here, but I'm going to add in those fine hairs similar to how we worked on the face and just kind of go throughout the entire raccoon, building up on this hair texture to make it look a little bit more lifelike. And feel free to just keep building up on the colors. You'll see that I spend a little bit of time in one section, just keep alternating between colors, building it up until it's looking how I like. That's really what I'm doing throughout this entire raccoon is I'm just adding these layers, adding these different colors, building up on what I have just laid down to get it to the look and feel of what I want for this raccoon. And now that we have the body complete, let's go ahead and work on the tail. Then we'll work on the kind of hands. They will be kind of buried behind these berries here, but we'll add a little bit of detail just in case there's parts that kind of peek out. And then we'll add the berries, the ground, everything, and then we'll be done. And I'm just picking up colors from the tail and blending them out. So I'm just kind of going back and forth over the areas with that circle blend brush just to blend it, add those hair-like textures to it, and I'll just keep doing this until it looks how I want it to look. Okay, now I'm happy with how this tail is looking, so I'm going to work on the hands here. Again, the hands are going to be buried behind the berries here, but I just want to add a little bit to the hands, so the claws and things like that. Just going to add a little bit here so that if we do have anything peeking out, it looks a little bit more natural instead of just having this cut off shape. Now let's go ahead and add a new layer above the raccoon and let's add some of these berries. So I'm going to use these darker pinks, I'm going to use a darker purple, and then we will build up the highlights there to make them look a little bit more shiny as if they're reflecting the light like fruit does. And then we'll work on the ground layer and we'll be pretty much close to being done. And I put all the fruit on one layer. I know there's a little bit overlap, especially with these, I guess, blackberries here. That's okay. We don't have too many, and so I'm just gonna put all the details on the same layer, and it won't be too bad because there's only just one that kind of overlaps. And then we're going to go ahead and alpha lock that layer. We're going to grab this medium purplish blue color, that circle blend brush, and we're going to add some texture to these purple berries here. We're just going to say they're blackberries. And so we're just doing these little kind of swirly, circular motions here to give it the texture of a blackberry. And I'm not pressing too hard with the Apple Pencil here in a lot of the different areas. I want it to be a little bit of a lighter touch here as I'm blending out this color. And then we'll add a little bit more of a highlight with this lighter blue color. And then we'll work on the other fruit, which we'll just say are the cranberries. We'll work on the texture on that and then the ground layer. And then again, we'll be done. And now let's go ahead and add a new layer. We're going to bring it below all of these other layers here. We're going to work on the ground. So go ahead and grab one of these colors. I'm going to do this very dark pink color. I'm going to use that square blend brush and I'm going to build up this color and this ground here with this and a couple other lighter colors. And then we will be done. And I'm going to use that dark pink again. I know we built it up and made it a little bit lighter, but I'm going to use it for the shadow of the raccoon here. And then let's go ahead and give the background a little bit more texture. I don't want to do too much with it. I want to keep it pretty simple, but let's go ahead and add a new layer. Bring it below the ground layer that we just created. We're going to alternate between this orange color and that original background color that we used. Again, it's just going to be a very subtle background. I don't want it to be too crazy. So I'm just going to go over a couple times between these two colors, blending it out, and then we will wrap it up. And I'm actually going to add a glow to this as well. So we're going to add a new layer, grab the soft brush that we have, that very light orange color, and we're just going to add a little bit of sunshine here, and then we'll erase bits and pieces here from where the raccoon is, because again, there's a little bit of that curvature, and so it's not going to be fully covering the front of the raccoon here. So we just want to kind of erase a little bit of that out to make it look a little bit more realistic, but I want to add a little more glow to the raccoon. And then I am going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a shadow layer. So go ahead and add a new layer. We're going to put right above the raccoon there and set it to Clippy Mask. And before we add the shadow, let's go ahead and change the highlights. I'm going to change it to lighter color. I'm going to turn the opacity down because I don't want it to be too bright. And then for the shadow layer, we're going to set it to multiply, grab a darker purple color, and we're going to start coloring in at the bottom part of the raccoon here. So because we set it to clipping mask, it will stay within the shape of that raccoon. But if you have a mistake or you mess up or you don't like how the shadow layer is looking, you can easily erase that. You can delete that layer and it's not going to affect the shape of the raccoon underneath. And you can mess around with the blend mode. You don't have to use the same ones that I used in this video. In fact, I don't always use the same ones for every drawing that I have. It just depends on the drawing, what looks good to me for that scene. But I do like always turning down the opacity because they are very bright or very dark, too dark for me. So mess around with the settings, pick something that you like, and then once you have that done, we're done with our raccoon. And there we have our cute little raccoon foraging for berries. I had so much fun making this one for you all today. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment below and let me know what other forest animals you would love to see. But thank you again for being a Patreon member. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next video.